Hello, my name is Michele, and you're listening to Profit is a Choice. I'm so excited to welcome Ceil DiGuglielmo of the So Much More podcast back to share this podcast with me, continuing a 4-year tradition of reviewing our year and preparing for the next. Ceil is the owner of the custom drapery workroom called So Much More, a podcast by the same name, the owner of the Curtains and Soft Furnishings resource library, and the publisher of the Drapery Design Digital Digest. Enjoy listening to us digging into the challenges and shifts that happened in 2021 and find out what books are on our holiday reading list. Every day, empowered entrepreneurs are taking ownership of their company financial health and enjoying the rewards of reduced stress and more creativity. With my background as a financial software developer, owner of multiple businesses in the interior design industry, educator, and speaker, I coach women in the interior design industry to increase their profits, regain ownership of their bottom line, and to have fun again in their business. Welcome to Profit is a Choice. Hey, Ceil, welcome to the Joint Podcast.
Hey, Michele, welcome to the Joint Podcast. I love doing our year-end wrap-up. This is so much fun for me.
Me too. Who would have known that all the way back in 2018, you'd already been doing your podcast for a little bit. It was my first year and we decided to do it. And now every year we're like, I look forward to it.
I do too. And it's so funny because I listened to our previous years in preparation for doing this. And of course, the last 2 years are just hilarious to listen to because, you know, when we wrapped up 2019, we had no idea what was coming our way. And wrapping up the end of 2020 was even a little bit challenging. And yet here we are.
Yeah.
Another year under our belts, another year older, and neither one of us looks any different from the previous.
Of course not. You know what's so crazy about all of this, though, is I was looking over even just the titles, and it was funny. In 2018, the title was like Year in Review, Looking Forward, right? 2019, Committed to the Pursuit. That was what I named it on my side. And in 2020, Hindsight Brings Clarity.
That's funny.
That's funny. And I've been sitting here thinking, what would we even name it this year, right? Because it's been another interesting year. Not one of these years has been like I've not seen any of the years that I could look back and go, oh my gosh, that was like a repeat of another year. It's like something is coming.
A normal year. There's been nothing normal.
Something's come from outer space every time. That's been odd.
And we've both had so many changes in the years since we started our podcast and since we started doing these wrap-ups that I just keep thinking about resiliency.
Yes.
And how I've talked with people within our industry. And originally I always ask, do you think you're resilient? And the fact of the matter was most of my guests and many of your guests don't think they're resilient, but they are. And they say things, well, you just keep going. Well, everybody doesn't. And we've seen evidence of that, but we don't accept that for ourselves. And I do love that about so many of the people in our industry that we do just keep going. Okay, we got handed a curveball. Now let's pivot and let's figure something else out. Or you and I both know people in our industry who have created products out of the work that they do in their workroom and saw a need and created something, whether it's education or a product or something like that. And I feel like this past year, resiliency has been important. And I think that the people who have been the most resilient are the ones who are still doing well and not expecting a normal year, just rolling with the punches as they come.
Yeah. You know, it's a couple of things that strike me about that. Number one is I think that the non-normal is the new normal, right? I don't think that things are ever going to go back. I made that comment last year, and I know when I made it, I had a few people that were kind of uncomfortable with that, but I do believe it to be true. So I think having the perseverance, the resilience, the tenacity to hold on and to work through. And, that's a lot of that's what I push and talk about at the beginning too, is about making sure that we are owning everything, that we're being intentional, so that you don't get blindsided. But I have to laugh because my last 2 podcasts this month, I opened up the month of December with how to cope when being the boss sucks. That's like the first, I've never titled a podcast quite like that, but some of my clients kept saying it. And I'm like, it's true. There are pieces of this that just suck and we've got to still deal on. And then I think it was last week's podcast was how to end the year well for your business. And what does that mean? And it's interesting that you were talking about resilience, because I was looking back at how I had defined finishing well. And I wrote, finishing well for me means to complete items that were critical and to define what critical means. And then to complete those critical items in the best way that I could, not sloppy, not half done, fully done. And it means to be proud of the effort that was put in because they're setting me up for a better future. And then I went on through it and made the comment, sometimes it's about just being steady or still standing when it's all done. That's that resiliency. That's that perseverance. Sometimes it's just getting through it.
Yeah.
And there's strength in that.
There absolutely is, Michele. And I think that sometimes we can't, I hate to say this because it sounds so trite, but we can't see the forest for the trees. And we're so caught up in what's going on and we can't get past this moment. But sometimes we have to be in this moment to be able to be standing on the other side. And I'm so impressed with so many of the people in our industry who have rolled with, we shut down and people found ways to get work done. And then people were stuck in their homes. So they were deciding that they needed window treatments and soft furnishings. And then we have the whole, we can't get goods, we can't get products, we can't get supplies to do the things that we need to do. There has been something of there have been major hurdles for us in this industry, many other industries too, but I don't think too many people outside of our industry are listening to this podcast. Yet we're still going and going strong and having healthy businesses. And I really do love the support that I see. I just saw Kate Grunke's, I don't know whether it was her blog or a preview for her podcast about being prepared that things are going to shift again next year. And it's like, okay, there's that reminder again, like, all right, I'm here and I got through this part, but I do have to look ahead. And so I love that the themes of our podcasts have covered what we've had to cover in general these last couple of years.
Agreed. And, even the big issue that we're all facing, I know my workrooms, my designers, all of them, is lead times and customer expectations and constantly resetting those expectations because what they set the first time can't be met and it's totally out of their control. At the beginning, people were very kind and they were very understanding. And I think people's ability to wait is becoming more difficult.
Yes, it's been tested and stretched.
Yeah. I think their kindness levels and empathy and understanding levels are starting to fray. And on both sides, for us and them, I think everybody's just getting frustrated, and it's not stopping anytime soon. And that's the challenge. 2 things. My son sent me a note and he's like, he's in commercial construction. I've mentioned that before, but he sent me a note and he's like, Mom, I need to let you know. He said, and please let your people know we're running into that we can't even get upgraded shingles for buildings, only builder grade shingles. And if you want anything that is above a builder grade shingles, it's 10 to 12 weeks from the time, or 10 to 12 months from the time you put in the order. So if you want shingles for your house, like really nice shingles for your house, you have to plan a year in advance. So everybody, I'll tell you something else that I'm hearing scuttlebutt about this year, and that's about bringing manufacturing back into the United States. Mm-hmm. I'm hearing a lot of that too, because the recognition of the dependence on overseas markets and overseas transportations and container cost and all of these things and the shipping and the handling. I had a client that I was talking to yesterday. She owns a custom workroom that primarily does new upholstery. So creates new upholstery, frames, the whole thing. And she made the comment, she's like, oh my gosh, Michele, like I don't remember if she said 8 to 10 or 10 to 12 weeks out. And I'm like, that's nothing. That's normal, but it's a constant. Yeah. And I said to her, we need to look at your capacity. What else can we do? How many more can we take? Why don't we go push deeper in the US market? Right. Because even if you told somebody 16 weeks, 4 months, that is nothing compared to the 10 to 12 months that they're waiting to ship it on a slow boat from anywhere outside of the US.
Yes.
Exactly. And I think the light bulb went off and she was like, oh my gosh. And I'm just hearing more and more people talk about, and that's why having these drapery workrooms, the upholstery workrooms, the artisans that we have that are making and creating and doing these more bespoke things, they're the cabinetry, like all of these things. There's so much need for that. And here's the challenge. We don't have a lot, and we've talked about this for years and years, Ceil. We don't have those artisans coming in behind the artisans we're losing. We don't have a deep bench on this. And so understanding and showing other people that they can use their hands and their skills and their talents to create these things, and then us pricing them appropriately to be able to live in the United States to buy them. And now, honestly, the cost of the shipping has made the cost of US based seem very reasonable. It's all moved into a very even playing field. And that's been a very interesting thing to watch. And I think that's going to be an area to focus on for 22, is to see some of the manufacturing of things move back into the US and some openings there.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I also think that we're poised to allow for the appreciation of that work.
Yes. And the value of the work.
Yes.
Right. The value of it.
Because as you just said, by the time it sits for 3 months on a shipping container and all of the costs that have come along with shipping, it really does change the perspective of what custom costs here in the United States.
I think something else that it's going to do is, I think, you remember back in the day, you and I are old enough, we're over 45.
Yeah, just a little bit.
You just joke on that.
Just
but
a little bit.
A day or two older than 45. But I say that because I can remember my mom and dad having items in the home that were handed down from their parents and their grandparents. And these were well-made, solid wood, constructed items. And then there's this age group, and some may be listening, who were like, in this younger age group right now, they don't want anything of mom and dad's. But some of them have been really willing to go out and buy cheap IKEA stuff or cheap imports that are going to fall apart in 3 years. But I think that when we move back to more US-based manufacturing, and we are really looking at the quality of what these craftspeople are creating and the price that we're paying for it, I think it could shift the cheap import, which is no longer, is still cheap in some cases,
right.
But from construction, but not from cost. And I think it could shift us back to quality pieces that have longevity in the home versus such a throwaway mentality of, it's so cheap, I'll just go buy another one and Amazon will dump it on my doorstep tomorrow. I really think that it could, if we allow it to. I mean, all of this is if we allow it to. I do believe that we could shift into more quality, value, not just product and service and everything. And I think that could be a good thing.
One of the things that I've really enjoyed watching over the past couple of months is the growth within the upholstery industry and how education has really blossomed there.
Mm-hmm. And isn't that great?
Yeah. And connection, because that was that part of our industry had not quite caught up in the sharing and education part, and they're catching up beautifully. And I love seeing
it being quite disconnected.
Exactly. And I see it's so much better than it was. But I'm also noticing what some of these brilliant upholsterers are taking older pieces and creating works of art. And some of them are, I love it because I can look at certain things and say, well, that's not my taste, but man, is that cool. And of course, I'm still in shock when I hear mid-century and realize that's from when I was born. But the look that people are like, just by changing the fabric and taking a skirt off of a piece, they update a really good quality piece of furniture that now can be enjoyed for years to come. And I love the designers that I see saying, okay, what are we going to work with that you already have? Now let's build around that, as opposed to throwing everything out and starting all over again. Most of us can't afford to do it. And it's too risky because we don't know what we're going to be able to get to replace these things. So I love seeing that. And it doesn't even necessarily mean more traditional tastes. It just means taking what we have and working with it and taking advantage of the artisans that are available to do this work for us.
There's a saying, is that necessity is the mother of invention, right? And I know my mother told me a story that I think back in the early 70s, she had made me a little dress, and somehow the iron sat on it too long and burned a hole in it. And she called her mother, my grandmother, and my whole family sewed except for me at the time. And she's like, Mom, what do I do? And she's like, well, I guess you're going to have to work around it. And Mom ended up coming up with like this applique and putting some things here to cover up the burn mark because she didn't have enough fabric or whatever. And it made it into an even more beautiful piece than it would have been without. And she talks about that sometimes. And I think that is a little bit of what is also happening now. I am seeing the antique market start to explode a little bit, right? Where people are searching for these pieces that they can rework. It's interesting too. I've heard two different sides of it. I've heard some designers say, nothing inspires me anymore. I'm just so uninspired. I think that's just because they're drained and they're tired. But then I hear other designers who say, I'm now looking at these things differently. I'm looking not just what is this piece, but what could this piece become?
Right.
Right.
Yes.
And I think there's a new, is it called what is it? Is it grand traditional, the new traditional? I forgot what it is.
Oh, yeah, I've seen it. I don't remember what it's called.
For some reason, my brain won't even go there today. But in other words, taking some of these pieces and twisting and turning them a little bit and looking at what can you get your hands on and what can we do. But I think it's also showing us as a world, because I don't think we're the only ones struggling with this, right, in the US. I think it also shows us what patience has to look like. And I think the stress part, one of the stress points is we thought we had so evolved that we wouldn't have, we fixed all these issues. And now here we are struggling with them. And I think that has taken many of us and shaken our confidence just in I would have never thought it would have happened to us. I would have thought that we're in we're supposed to be Joan Jetson over here. I'm supposed to be able to push a button, sweet girl, and have my dinner show up.
And that's
like, I wasn't expecting it to be on a cargo ship sunk in the middle of the ocean or hanging out on the California coast.
Right. And that's, we've become.
And then can't truck it across the U.S. to me.
Because each time, okay, well, they got people to unload the ships. Okay, but there's nobody to drive it across the country.
And it has been the weirdest thing to go out to a restaurant and order something. They go, oh, well, we're out of hamburger meat. Oh, the other day we were at a restaurant. They're like, oh, we have one tomato slice left. Would you like that? And I was thinking, what? What do you mean you have one tomato slice left? I
think we've become, you mentioned, Amazon will drop it on my doorstep the next day. Well, if you have Amazon Prime, you are not getting things the next day anymore. It's really, so we've become a society of immediate satisfaction. And I don't think on many levels it's terrible. I think there's so many wonderful things that came out of the pandemic that taught us how to be resilient and how to pivot and all that.
And what was most important, our families.
Absolutely.
And taking that step back from the hurried pace. We heard so much of that last year, right?
And yet I feel like a lot of designers' workrooms are now panic struck because we're headed into the holidays as you and I are recording this, and I have to have this and I have to have this. And I've seen a couple of conversations on the forum in the library and as well as on Facebook groups. I stopped doing that years ago, where I adjusted my delivery dates. And I said, once we get to a certain point, no, it just is not going to happen, because I just couldn't function well with the weight of the jobs hanging over my head and knowing I wasn't finished and would I get it done on time. So I moved my dates up even more, but managed expectations by saying, if it all comes in, we will, but I can't guarantee that. But I feel like it is a new level of patience now and a new level of acceptance. We're having a little bit of work done in our house, and I ordered some new carpeting, and the reaction between my husband and I was so funny, because he talked to the guy who came out to measure and he said, he thinks it'll be in 3 weeks. And I went, oh crap, it's going to be that long. And he says, isn't that great? And I'm like, first of all, the fact that I'm the one who thought it was going to be in sooner, but you have to have things all work together. And then I realized, oh, you know what? That really will be okay if it's 3 weeks, because certain pieces are not coming in until after that. But he was the one who was so unsurprised or was so pleasantly surprised that it would be in 3 weeks. And I'm thinking, 3 weeks, that's longer than I expected. All right, well, I'll have to Ceil, you're lucky it's coming in 3 weeks.
You know what else is interesting is that, and I really feel for the designers in the workrooms and the other people in the chain. And it is that perhaps many of them, I know my clients, they tried to plan so far in advance that they wouldn't have all these things stack up. But because of forces outside of their control, it kept pushing. So now it is stacking up. There's this new, I won't say idea, but our processes are being, for lack of, I'm going to give you a technical term. Let's go technical, smushed together. In that, like the designers that are doing whole house builds, they're still in the middle of figuring out the construction pieces, and they're having to specify furnishings to go in that house. Whereas before you would be, maybe half the way, 2/3 of the way through before you would start
finalizing things,
procuring and worrying about those things because of the timing. But now they're almost so on top of each other that when you take on a job, you're not just taking on like the duration of this project over this long span of time. The timeline is now crunched it's front loaded. And that means all the resources have to be on deck right then. I mean, it's just crazy. We're constantly looking at capacity scheduling and what can we do and how do we get this done? And everybody's in a hurry up and wait, not because their processes weren't built, because they're all having to be tweaked and changed to keep up with what we can get and what we cannot get, and what was available when we started and not available 20 seconds later by the time we hit enter.
Oh my goodness. And also for people who have been working out of their homes is storage space. You get one job finished or you get part of a job finished. And because I'm a one-person workroom, 90% of my jobs, I start and I work through it and I finish it. Then I start the next job. I've got 4 or 5 jobs in the middle of things downstairs because.
Right. And we would normally have never done that. You start to complete.
This is in and I can work on this. Okay. Well, that didn't come in. I'll set that aside. And
yes, lots of juggling.
Yeah. And those are not my normal processes. So yeah, I've smushed a few things myself.
And then trying to make sure that we're not dropping any of the balls in the middle of it. And so again, I think the resiliency sometimes, like I said in my own podcast, is just getting to the end and still standing, still being on the other side of it. But then looking back and saying, what lessons did I learn? What can I now do? How can I improve on any of those things? But holding it ever so lightly because it will shift again.
Yes. And it's interesting because in listening to some of the things that you and I talked about last year, and I do want to ask you some of those same questions, that holding it lightly was something that really stayed with me for this year. And I've joked around a little bit, like some of it is part of the grace of aging. And part of it is that I have learned certain things, but I've tried to let things not bother me quite as much, or okay, this is what it is. Now what can I control and what can I do with it? And that is still a work in progress. But I think it's the most important lesson that we can get out of these last couple years is giving ourselves some grace, as you love to say, but also, okay, here's what it is right now. I don't know what's coming next, but I'll be ready for whatever it is. So I'm curious, what are you most proud of this past year?
I think one of the things I'm most proud of this past year is I'm most proud of my clients. I am so blessed to work with some of the most amazing business owners in this industry who have businesses that are all sizes. And I'll tell you what makes my ideal client ideal and why I'm so proud of them. And it's because they love their business. And I don't mean they just love to design or love to make window treatments or love to upholster, but they love the entire business and they're dedicated to the survival of that business and to doing what it takes, even when it's hard. And to even be able to stand beside them and support them and walk them through that and then see them achieve that success. I'm not talking necessarily grand success. I'm talking about success over a mindset that says I can't, and now it says I can. Success over, oh my gosh, I actually accomplished what I said I wanted to accomplish in XYZ timeframe. It could be small gains or large gains, but to see them take the information that I work so hard to share and impart to them and to have them use it and then come back and say, coaching with you is different than coaching in some other platforms and ways. Because you don't just tell us what to do. You show us how to think through it. You show us how to critically approach it. You show us how to do that deep critical thinking so that later, if I'm not there, they can still figure it out. It's kind of like when, we raise our children. And if you think about the transition of your children when they're little, they do because we tell them to do it. And then they go into the why phase. To try to understand. Then when they understand, if they think it's important, they do it. If they don't think it's important, they don't do it. So then our job is to continue to help them understand the why. Like, I don't really think it's important that I brush my teeth, but once every 6 months. No, sweetie, it's more important than that. But we have to connect those dots. But when they get it and then they do it, they're doing it because they understand the criticality of it.
Yes.
Not because we're telling them to do it. Right. So now when they are thinking it through, they can use that same logic and apply it to something else to determine how critical is it? Do I need to do it? Do I need to do it now? Do I need to do it that way? So just being able to teach that framework of decision making, which I believe is also a lost art, because everything's been so handed to us, step 1, step 2, step 3, that we don't know critically how to pull out and look at it. But I am most proud of being able to teach that to a group of business owners who want to be able to think critically about what they should do and shouldn't do, and when they should and when they shouldn't, and how they should and shouldn't, and then see their success. I mean, I am just like, I'm cheering in the back. That's just the best to me. That outweighs everything else. How about you? What are you most proud of?
I'm really excited that the new library website has opened. That has been
labor of love.
A labor of love. And I found myself some days having conversations about things that a year ago I didn't even know existed, and testing things out with the team that built the website, and also understanding that it would be like a living, growing thing. Like there's a date that it went live, but that was not the end. And it's not finished. Years ago, you build a website, you were done. And that's not how any of this works anymore. But also, there were times when I was looking at numbers or looking at ways that the website was working, and I realized, like, a couple years ago, I could never have even conceived of doing any of this. And I'm so proud of how much everyone embraced the new website and it's changed. We've had a lot of change going on, but people figured it out. And if they didn't, they asked for help, which is why I'm here in the first place. So I'm proud of the fact that it's up and running and that it gets better every day, and that the more it gets used, the more information is available for people looking for it, and that I kept going every day. There were a few setbacks, but everything is working most of the time. And I'm really proud of what the website is becoming.
Have you heard of the term CICD?
I don't think so.
So it's a software development term, and it means continuous integration and continuous delivery or continuous deployment.
Oh, that's perfect.
And so in the past, what we used to do is we would create something which was called a waterfall environment, which means you create it, pretty much you dump it, you're done. Create a website, you walk away. You create software and you create, and then you deliver. And now there is this idea of more of an iterative approach, your iteration 1, iteration 2, sprint 1, sprint 2, whatever. And so what you're really doing is you are saying, this is what I'm going to get here. And then you're continually improving it or integrating different pieces and continually delivering it and developing it. And so while it's a software term, I do believe that it is a term that, I know I use it even in my online education. My education today looks very different than it did when I launched it back in, 2016, 2015. It doesn't even look the same. And I'm constantly adding more and more and more to it. I'm constantly improving it or integrating it and delivering it and developing it. And so I think that's part of when we understand that as like the terminology and the application of it, it relieves us of having to do everything perfectly. And if you think about in the design world, quite often, that's the way that they design spaces. Mm-hmm. They're not walking in sometimes and in the initial design, rarely, I don't think I've ever really seen it. Do they go all the way down to here is the absolute last accessory we're putting on the bookcase? Right. They do it in a continual layer. And then an editing process or a changing process. So it is a continual loop, an iterative approach. And I think that that's just part of where we all are right now. It's the way things are working.
Yeah, I agree.
But it's having to make peace with that, because I've always been more of that. Let's get it all done, put it on the shelf, walk away, go put my energy over here.
Yeah, exactly.
And the first couple of times, Kate does my website and she helps me with things. And the first couple of times, either she or one of my coaches says, we need to revisit that. I was like, I don't want to revisit it. I've already done it. Please don't make me do that again. And I'm glad that I feel that way, because I require my people to, my clients, I'm like, all right, we need to go back and look at that process, because the process that got you here might not be the same process that gets you there. And they're like, well, I did. I know you did that. And that got you here. Let's look and see if it will get you there. And so you really do have to have a mindset for that, or it can feel like it's derailing you or keeping you from what you have perceived to be more important.
Yeah. So what was your biggest challenge this year?
You can tell we didn't practice these before. So it's probably, a good thing. Oh gosh, I feel like this year went so fast. I think one of the biggest challenges for me was being nimble enough to recognize what was happening in industries surrounding us, mm-hmm. and trying to either bring it to the attention of my clients and help them work around it and solve it. I got a lot more SOS calls this year, not from my ship is sinking, but more of this is happening and I need to respond quickly. Right. And this is outside of what I've had happened before or done before. Right. I think some of the challenges that I have had have been helping my people navigate this lack of people to work, and people to hire, or people that don't show up, or I can make more by staying home than working. And it's a sad statement in general to say that we have jobs that we just cannot fill because people don't want to work, and because of the way that things shifted and changed, some can't work anymore. I don't know that it's all just it's not. I know that it's not just based on one thing, but just the idea that we have work to be done. We have sales in the pipeline. And that's just it's been a challenge for everybody. But because I'm such a let me help you fix it and do it and get around it, it's felt even more challenging saying, all right, so what happens if we can't get that resource? How can we update the process? What else can we do? How can we shift our resources? And so I think it's more of having to just kind of be on the fly, constantly able to stop and reimagine where each of them are. Right. And I carry the weight of really trying to help them because it's important to me. Like I'm not here just trying to spout stuff out for 500 people in a group. I work with a small set of people and I go very deep. So their troubles are my troubles. Their challenges are my challenges. And I am constantly working to try to solve what is happening around them. Mm-hmm. So I think that has been hard for me because it's been hard for them.
Yeah.
You?
I think, again, the website, it's what I'm most proud of, but it was also my biggest challenge. Understanding how people were using it and also understanding that some of the parts of the library that were older and actually were even a sub website couldn't necessarily just be translated. And then there was something called Picture Trail that held some information. It just disappeared.
Oh, I remember my Picture Trail.
Yep, just gone. And it had some helpful information on it, but it was also looking at analytics and saying, okay, but only 2 people looked at this particular part of in a whole year. And I know that it's quote unquote valuable, but not valuable enough for anybody to look at it. And so, I still have the old forum accessible through the new library, and the new forum is doing really well. But trying to understand how to meet the needs of the members of the library and how to have the information they needed readily available. Because like you, I know what they're going through. And if someone's having a foam emergency or they're having a lining emergency, they don't need an answer in a week. They need it now. And trying to be available, but setting up boundaries really was challenging with this library because I am not available 24/7, but the library is open 24/7 and you can go in and look. And that just because somebody emails me a question at midnight does not mean I have to answer it. I am not looking at my email at midnight, I promise you. But it's that wanting to help, but not needing to be available 24 hours a day. That part's very challenging for me.
Okay.
Still working on it.
You're doing a good job.
Thank you.
I mean, I think we all have had to figure out our boundaries. I know I've had to reset some of mine, but so have my clients because people are now, it's almost like when we are so available that people send things when they think about it.
Yes.
And I try to, if I do it too, but I try to write in there, please do not answer this until Monday. I even sometimes write it in the subject line, do not open until Monday.
I have done that too. Yeah. I've also, if it's an email, I've scheduled it to not go till Monday. If I remember to do it, sometimes I hit send before I do. But I also recognize now, I used to get very indignant about texts that came at inappropriate times. And I just realized it's what you said. People just send it when they think of it. They're not necessarily expecting a response. But it's very hard for me to step back and say, I'm not going to answer that right away. But I've had to. Yeah,
I've had to reset a few that says pretty much if you have access to my phone and my email, my text, it's during business hours. and everybody's been really, really responsive. I mean, I had somebody one time say to me, some of your clients have that information. And I said, yeah, but my clients are respectful. So I don't really have a lot of pushback. I mean, once in a while, there may be a little something here and there, but I've never had to like go, okay, we're getting ready to be done because you've got to quit reaching out to me. I don't have it. So I'm very blessed that way.
No, people within the library are very respectful. It's just if they happen to be looking for something at midnight and I do wake up at 3:00 in the morning and look at it, I don't get out of bed to go find the answer for them, but I feel like I want to help them. So again.
Well, you also have an offering that could be available and many, many, many time zones.
Right.
So I do think that could add a layer of complexity.
Yeah.
To yours.
So,
all right. What's your next question?
All right. My next question is what I know that you are more of a planner than I am, and you're more organized in your planning. Do you have your goals set for next year yet?
I do, and I don't.
Okay.
So I do have goals. I have my 3 to 5 year strategic plan, but I also am in the process of launching something new in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be talking about that more on the podcast in the new year. And so now I am in the process of what I would call stress testing my Scarlet Thread Consulting goals, just to make sure that I keep everything in alignment as I move forward. And so, it's like anything, you add in a new anything and you just want to make sure. So as we get closer to the end of this year, I'm revisiting the work that I did. I remember, I think it was back in March, I took my business on vacation for a week. And so I'm already planning to do that again. And I set some pretty big goals at that point in time, but I've created even more goals since then because I'd love to do that. And now I'm just kind of merging everything together. So yes, I have a roadmap. Yes, I have a plan. I'm just trying to make sure that it's still my plan. I honestly, that CICD, I do that with my goals. Does this still matter to me? Does it still matter to me now within this time frame, that whole critical thinking piece?
Right.
Because sometimes there's something that I still care about. I thought I cared about it in Q1, but something else has raised up that I now think that is so much more important in Q1. This can move to Q2 or Q3.
Right.
So that's kind of what I'm working on now.
Okay.
And I need to go back through it again. Yeah. But I do this a lot towards the end of a quarter or a year. Yeah. And I churn. I'll be churning like this, honestly, probably through the end of December. And I can't remember if I've told you this before. I always take the first week. I take 2 weeks off. When I say off, I just mean not necessarily client facing. I take a week off between Christmas and New Year's. Brain rest, let it go, read the book, take a nap, play the family games, do what I want to do. But that very first week of January, I don't do client meetings. Number one, they're all getting back into the office and they're all crazy and scattered trying to pick back up and I need to do the same. And so I found that if I give myself the gift of that, for my business, give it the gift of that first week of not having to answer. Not to say if my elite clients, if they email me, I'm going to email them. We're doing all the normal day-to-day activities, but I'm not meeting with clients because I am working on my business. Because once I've done that second week of January, when I've got all my stuff scheduled out, I can just go.
Right.
Like I can just answer them. I'm not then trying to get my own business act in gear. I already have it in gear. So it's kind of that put your own face mask on first.
Right.
And I learned by doing it in a way that didn't support my own business health and growth, was putting everything the client wanted and needed. And I'll tell my clients, the first few days back to work, do not set up client appointments. Right. Ease your way back in. You've just had a week off. Ease your way in. Do what you need to do to get your business set up so that you can work in your strength and not in your weakness and overwhelm.
Right. And not start off at that pace.
Not start off already at that pace. That's why when I go on a vacation or if I go somewhere, I always take that next day that I come back to work. I try my best not to schedule appointments so that I can catch up and breathe through it. Like I've started realizing these are my pain points. Well, the only person who's going to manage my calendar to solve it is me. Right. So the only person I can complain to and say being the boss sucks is me. So I got to go do it. Right.
You suck today, by the way.
Right. That's right. And then today you were awesome. Yeah. All right. How about you?
So I do have a couple of goals set. I cut back on the amount of window treatments that I was actually making quite a bit this year. But, this time of the year is what it is. I will be finished all of the jobs that I promised before the holidays shortly. And then the first week of December, I really want to focus on getting ready for next year. And there's some new things I want to bring into the library. and some new things I want to do within the library. So I'm going to take a week to work on it then. But I can have a one-track mind. And while I'm working on the fabrication end of it, that's where my brain needs to be.
Okay. So you and I are recording this, and I just an hour before this recorded my other December podcast. So there's no way you could have heard it because they're all happening the same day. But for you and for those listening, when that December podcast comes out, I think it comes out like the 20th. It is how to end the year well. And I know you also get my newsletters, and I started sending out in September. Here are things to do to end the year well. So if you happen to save those, you can go back, and it's step by step talking you through some of the things you're mentioning needing to do.
If I happen to save them, of course I save them.
Well, I didn't even realize how much I talked about it until I was pulling together things for the podcast. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I've got like 5 emails that I've sent out that told exactly what I was doing and what I suggested they do. And I was like, good night, I forgot. I mean, I did it and I knew it was a plan, but you don't even sometimes realize until you're on the other side of it, how well that worked out.
I do think that for me, having my nose so close and so focused on getting the new website up, and then, no sooner getting it up and going, okay, I am with some window treatments to get done before the end of the year. That's what I'm looking forward to, is that I can really focus on how I want next year to go and what I want the library to look like now that the new website is up and running. So that's frequently I feel stressed about not doing that preparation, but knowing it's on my calendar is okay. I don't have to think about it right now, and then I'll go for it. So, yeah. So a couple of years ago, we did a podcast on reviewing some books, and we decided that since we were doing the wrap up, we'd also talk about 1 or 2 books that had mattered for us this past year. So I'm curious, is there any one particular book that you read this year that was impactful for you? I mean, we don't do this by video, but you are sitting in front of stacks and stacks of books, and mine are right next to me. So, but is there anything in particular this year that made a difference for you?
Yeah. And then remind me after that, I want to tell you about a new piece of technology that has been huge for me this year. I know you love to ask that question on your podcast. And so I have a piece of technology I want to share. I would say that there are 2 books this year that I have really enjoyed. And it is because my clients are those that are scaling and growing. I've kind of niched down to niched.
Yeah, I never know, but.
Well, it's both. Yeah. I looked it up.
Okay.
And I can't say niches in the riches. Right. Or say niches in the riches. That sounds really weird. So anyway, I have narrowed down my focus. How about that? So that I'm really working with, because this is my sweet spot, companies that are trying to grow and to scale in some way. They're not all scaling in a cookie cutter way, but trying to help them understand what it looks like to build a strategy, what it looks like to manage to that strategy, to create metrics and KPIs, key performance indicators, how to manage to those things so that they can intentionally grow the business that they want to grow. And so with that comes people and teams and, some contracts, some short-term, some long-term. Again, not a cookie cutter, but the 2 of the great books that I've really enjoyed reading, one of them is called Everyone Deserves a Great Manager. I think Cynthia Blaskacek may have put this one out there, and I got it. You can see I've got it all marked up. It's by Scott Miller, and it's really been good. It says it is from the leadership experts at the Franklin Covey, who brought you 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which I love.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's very actionable. I've really enjoyed it. I've got stickies and stuff everywhere on it, but we all do deserve a great manager. You've probably heard me say on the podcast before that I don't believe people leave bad companies, they leave bad managers. I had heard that before, and I've seen that play out. The second one that I have personally enjoyed is The Vision-Driven Leader.
Oh, I love Michael Hyatt. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So this one is really good. We've talked about And I think everybody hears it so much now that they don't even know where they heard it the first time. But find your why, live in your why, work with your why. And it's so darn important. So important. But this talks about being the vision. I see this as almost like taking E-Myth Revisited, that CEO visionary, and saying, now here's what you do as that visionary. Right. So they talked about it in E-Myth and it gave you some, but this one is even going further. Remember when I said that we will do things when we understand why we should do them and we really connect them? This helps you do that. And so it's just been really an insightful read to understand. So those are two of my most favorites that I've read. I'll tell you three more that are on my reading list for the holidays or for this time that we're going through. One of them is Mike Michalowicz has a new book out called Get Different.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. And it's about marketing. I don't know if you know anything about the Savannah Bananas.
I don't.
You don't? Okay. So they are a baseball team that really brings a whole lot of fun into what they're doing, but they've got a different way of doing it. And Jesse, the guy that started Savannah or that owns Savannah Bananas, he and Mike are friends. But this is part of just that whole being different. Like when you so blend in, nobody knows who you are. But Get Different doesn't necessarily mean that you got to be wild and crazy. Like that's not me. You know, I watch some of the flashy stuff that's happening. We all hear get visible, be visible. But I have to do it. And I would dare to say all of us need to do it in a way that resonates with who we are and how we're made.
Oh, yeah. You have to be genuine. Otherwise, I think people see that.
Yeah. I don't know. Sometimes some of it feels so salesy and slick and ick that I would just almost be like, I just hope that my ideal client finds me and shows up. I mean, we all know that's not how it works, but I'm hoping this will be interesting. We'll see how different I get. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, I like Mike Michalowicz's writing.
Yeah, oh gosh, he cracks me up.
He's very funny and very witty.
You know, that brings up the point that he actually just did a video teaching sales and reading of Profit First with like slide decks that come across with him teaching it. He's so Mike and he's so funny.
I did see that he was doing that.
Yeah. It's a new kind of technology kind of thing or a new way of doing it. It's kind of a mix between Audible and a webinar, which is interesting.
Yeah. Anyway. I set aside the email that I got about that. I need to know more about this.
Yeah. One more, Michael Hyatt, Free to Focus. Because who doesn't want to focus when like everything's going crazy? And so it's really helping you think about how to reduce your task list, slay distractions, and free yourself from interruptions. So that sounded good to me.
I'm adding that one to my list.
Right? Miss Procrastina working over there. Right. And then this one was one that was just recommended to me by another strategic business coach. He is working in like Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies. So he has a different clientele than I do. But the 4 disciplines of execution.
Oh, I have not heard about this. That's interesting.
Yeah, he's like, Michele, if you do strategic plans, you're going to love this. It's by Chris McChesney, Sean Covey, and Jim Hewling. Achieving Your Wildly Important Goals. So the 4 disciplines of execution. So and again, it's a Franklin Covey book. So that's what I'm going to be binging during the holidays.
Our nerd idea of good light reading.
I know. But being able to read it when I'm not under the gun to figure it out is relaxing and enjoyable to me.
So that's interesting because one of the books that I read this year is Getting Things Done by David Allen.
Oh, so good.
It's a great book. That. And what you said earlier.
Touch it once, right? Deal with it once, yes. Touch it once. Don't keep bringing it back up.
And what I love is that there's an Evernote specialist. Her name is Stacy Harmon. And she teaches how to use Evernote in the Getting Things Done philosophy. And the problem for me has been, because I'm working multiple businesses, is to not have one area where I can focus and say, all right, well, this goes here, this goes here. So I got a little bit distracted and a little bit disorganized. So this is not fully in place yet. This is a work in progress, but that touching it once thing and having an inbox and emptying it, I think for me, my inbox was often, it's not done. So it has to stay in the inbox. Where I love one of the things that he says is your brain is not the place to store these things. And I was using my brain and it was not storing well. And I was not remembering certain things and I was not taking care of things on time. So it's a work in progress, but it's really been impactful in terms of, oh, okay. So if I keep one master list, but in Evernote, I can link to different lists. That's where I was falling apart before. So
I use Asana that way. So in my Asana, I have all the different projects, all the different tasks, and it's kind of like my table of contents.
Yes, that's a great way to think of it.
And it links out to everything. And then I can look in my email, I can assign it, put my name on it, put a date on it, get it out of that immediate inbox so that I work to keep my inbox between, 2 to 3, 5 things max that I'm in the middle of processing and working on, or that I need to deal with in the next day. Otherwise, I get it out and try to get it as close to zero as I can. One time, I think it was at the end of last year, I must have hit some button or Outlook did whatever it did. It archived every email I had. I started freaking out. And Joel comes down there and he's like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, all of my emails just went into an archive folder. And he's like, okay, they're still there. I'm like, but they're not in my inbox. My inbox was, 1,000 things that I just couldn't figure out what to do with. And then he's like, why don't you just use it as a clean slate? Because they're there. You can go get them. And I went,
yes.
Okay,
yes.
I'll leave them. I don't even think I've gone back to them. I think they're all still there. And now I just worked down to having, but I'm telling you what, it cleared my brain. It cleared the weight, the perceived weight of having to deal with it. And so now you could just about delete them all because I don't go into them. I don't care. So I just work through my immediate and move it into the slot. But I'm with you on that.
I found that really helpful.
It is a really good book.
And then the other one is Atomic Habits by James Clear.
That was mine last year.
Absolutely love his thought processes and love the idea of habit stacking. And if you're trying to do something differently, add it onto something you're already doing, and also what you shouldn't be doing. So actually, both of those books I have read and listened to because there was so much to absorb and really felt like they both had a lot to offer. But I would say probably, I'm looking because the book is over there. I would say probably Atomic Habits I've used more or implemented more than Getting Things Done. I'm still in the process of that one. But I get James Clear's newsletter and he's brilliant.
It's so good.
It's so good. It's concise. It's to the point. And I just don't feel like.
And it's provocative.
Yes. I love that about him. And right now I don't really have, I was just looking at my Amazon wish list. I don't have.
You have an Amazon wish list? I'm impressed. I have an Amazon buy now button. I literally I'm like, oh, that looks like a good book. Buy. I should probably put in more on the wish list.
Okay. So here's why I do it. I do it two reasons. I put them in there because I can be impulsive and overbuy them when it comes to books. I also will sometimes.
Is there such a thing?
I know that's hard to
I don't
recognize.
know that there is such a thing, but whatever.
But I sometimes will get too easily distracted by a new book. So if it's on my wish list, one, I might completely forget about it. And that means it really isn't what I need to be reading. But two, I will also try to get it. I use Cloud Library with my local library and get a lot of ebooks that way.
Yeah. My business books, as you saw, put tags in them, mark them up, but my fiction and enjoyment, now I'll do the cloud through the library and download them to my Kindle and read it on my Kindle. And I have a couple of books on my Kindle, but I'm not so great at highlighting there and pulling it out.
I'm not either.
I want to flip through the book and get to what I want to get to and move on because I remember where it is in the book. My brain sees it in the book.
If it's a business book or a I don't want to say a how-to book, but if it's a book that requires action, I end up buying it.
Yeah.
For that same reason, I remember where it is. I can highlight things. I can stick a Post-it sticky note in it. So, but sometimes I'll get partway.
Sometimes they have a free version on Kindle or a $1 version. I'm going to go buy it. And then if I think, oh, that's awesome, I think I'll get another.
That's frequently what happens. Or I'll get partway through a book. I'll go, yeah, this really isn't for me. And then I haven't purchased it.
Well, that's smart.
I do have, I'm just looking, I do have 2 books that I'm thinking about. Sparked, Discover Your Unique Imprint for Work That Makes You Come Alive. It's by Jonathan Fields. He has a podcast called The Good Life. And then Get a Grip, How to Get Everything You Want from Your Entrepreneurial Business. So I may take a look at them.
I think I have Get a Grip.
Oh, yeah.
I've read that one. Who's that one
That
by?
is by Gino Wickman and Mike Patton.
Yes, that's good.
Okay.
I have that one. He's the same guy that wrote Traction and all of that. Is part of that series. Yeah, I liked it.
All right, then I'll definitely get that one.
Yep, I like
if
it.
you can recommend it, then I'll definitely get it.
Girl, I got a whole nother list of recommendations, but we'll have to do a whole nother podcast for that. Okay, so I want to share the piece of technology that has really, really, really helped me. And it's the Remarkable 2. So I have the iPad Pro with the pen. So they'll be coming at me, telling me I need the iPad Pro.
I respect
Not you, but you know what I mean?
works.
Okay. And I love my iPad Pro. However, it's thicker and it doesn't feel like I am writing the same way on the apps. The Remarkable 2, I can write on it. I've got the stylus, which is very similar to an Apple Pen. It has a thinner point on it to me, but I can pull in PDFs. I can write. So I have mine set up where I keep it open on my desk like I would a notebook. And I have folders set up for every client. I've got pieces of paper with all of my notes from everything. It automatically syncs in the cloud. I can then pull it into their files and do. So it's just so automatic for me. But I am just about paperless because of that. And I don't know why. And so, those that have been able to find this level of success with the iPad, kudos. I could not. It did not feel like I was writing on paper. The Remarkable, you can go in and change the backgrounds. I can put layers where it looks like college ruled or where it looks like checklist and it's just a touch of a button that creates all of this for me. I don't know. It's changed everything for me.
So I'm a big believer in you find what works for you. I use Good Notes very much like you just said. I keep my iPad open on my desk. You and I are talking. I'm writing but I purchased something called Paperlike. And it is a film that goes over the top of my iPad. So when I am writing, it feels like a pen and paper. And I use Good Notes the same way. I can take quick notes on something. I can upload a PDF. Your 2-day workshop this year, I wasn't able to do an attendance, but I uploaded the PDF that you sent and all the notes are taken right in there. And same thing, it's uploaded to the cloud. I can look at it on my computer. I can look at it on my phone. So I think anything that helps you do a better job, go for it. And I've heard a couple people mention, in fact, one of my designers just told me that she bought the Remarkable and she really loves it. She likes drawing on it, she said.
Yes, a lot of my designers are doing this. They're drawing it and then they're actually bringing it into their iPad and putting it into Procreate and doing other things with it and then loading it to the next place. So I think it really just comes down to what feels right in I tried on my iPad and it felt too big and clunky. And there's something about the Remarkable pen. It's smaller than the iPad pen. It's got ridges. It's got certain ways for your hand to hold it. I don't know. It just feels differently to me. And that feeling means I'm actually going to use it versus I have the other and don't use it. But I knew you'd be happy for my.
Absolutely, I am. It doesn't have to be what I use. It's working for you.
Right. But it's the idea of not having all that paper. And now I can go back and find things because I have my system of how to date it.
Yes.
And how to categorize it so I can find everything. So
finding it. The most important thing.
Everything. I know. Well, Ceil, thank you so much for having just Another year in review where we're focused on resiliency, ending well, still
standing. Here we are.
and being able to have that continuous improvement and continuous development, even on ourselves as business owners.
This has been a lot of fun, Michele. I look forward to when this goes on my calendar. I really look forward to it.
Same. Well, you have an awesome end of the year.
You too, Michele.
And I'm sure that we'll be touching base again in the new year.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
All right. Bye. Ceil, it's always such a pleasure to talk with you, and especially to recap our year. This is just something I hope we're able to do for a long time to come. If you're a drapery workroom, I cannot recommend the Curtains and Soft Furnishings Resource Library enough. In its original form, it's the resource that I found when Googling after midnight one night back in 2002 to help me save and to build my business. If not for this wonderful resource and the talented people associated with it at the time, and even today, I think I might have given up my dream to build a creative business, and I would have gone back to corporate. So I'm just forever thankful for all who have had a hand in building and preserving this resource for the workroom industry. And thank you to Ceil for all she does for this industry today. If you're interested in learning more about my strategic coaching and the methodology that I use, check out my Work With Me page on the website scarletthreadconsulting.com. It would be my pleasure to coach you or to support you with the financial courses that I have to build a foundation for your business success and profitability. Choose each day to be profitable, because profit doesn't happen by accident. Profit is a Choice is proud to be part of the designnetwork.org, where you can discover more design media reaching creative listeners. Thanks for listening, and stay creative and business minded.